By the time the little princess had been crying for 2 hours, the Royal Medical Wing had exhausted 17 sedatives, 3 neural lullabies, a holographic moon, and 1 highly respected physician's patients. The physician, Dr. Valor, stood beneath a suspended ring of blue diagnostic light, staring at the shifting patterns above the child's cradle. He had 4 degrees in xenoneurology, 2 honorary medals from the Empire, and absolutely no idea what to do next. "She is not in pain," he said for the 6th time. Queen Elira turned toward him slowly. Her silver blonde hair fell over the polished shoulders of her ceremonial armor, and her long, elegant ears had lowered slightly with exhaustion. Though she ruled 9 inhabited systems and had once negotiated peace while an enemy fleet aimed weapons at her palace, she now looked helpless before one crying child. "If she is not in pain," the queen asked, "why has she been screaming as though the universe personally offended her?" Dr. Valor glanced at the cradle. Princess Leora, 6 years old and small enough to disappear beneath the silk blankets, continued to cry with astonishing determination. Her pale face had turned pink, her silver hair clung damply to her forehead, and her delicate long ears trembled with every breath. A caretaker robot floated beside her, projecting a field of glowing butterflies. The princess screamed louder. The robot dimmed the butterflies. "Emotional response negative," it announced. "Excellent observation," muttered one of the nurses. "Perhaps next it can tell us the floors beneath us." The medical wing was the most advanced facility on the planet Kaelora. Its walls contained microscopic machines capable of repairing damaged tissue before wounds had time to bleed. The ceiling housed quantum scanners that could map every electrical signal in the brain. A narrow silver platform beside the cradle could reconstruct broken bones, molecule by molecule. None of it helped. One machine played the recorded heartbeat of the queen. Another generated calming frequencies used on frightened star beasts. A third whispered bedtime stories in 800 languages, though it had become confused and was currently describing tax regulations from a mining colony. Leora cried through all of them. Outside the medical chamber, palace guards stood in rigid silence while servants hurried through the corridors carrying medicines that would never be used. Rumors had already begun spreading through the palace. Some believed the child had been poisoned. Others whispered about an ancient royal curse. The queen believed neither. She believed only what she could see. Her daughter was exhausted, frightened, and slipping further beyond the reach of every person who was supposed to protect her. "Try the resonance chamber again," Elira ordered. Dr. Valor hesitated. "Your Majesty, we have already tried it twice." "Then perhaps it will feel embarrassed and work the 3rd time." No one laughed. The doctor activated the chamber. A transparent sphere unfolded around the cradle, filling with soft golden light. Waves of artificial sound pulsed through the air, perfectly synchronized to Leora's nervous system. For a moment, her crying weakened. Everyone leaned forward. Then every display in the room flashed red. The princess released a sharper cry and the resonance chamber shut itself down. A voice from the ceiling announced, "Treatment unsuccessful." Dr. Valor closed his eyes. The Queen's personal guard, Captain Saren, lowered his voice. "Would you like me to arrest the machine?" Elira looked at him. Saren remained perfectly serious. "For incompetence," he added. The Queen almost smiled, but Leora's next sob erased it. At that same moment, 3 levels below, Daniel Mercer was arguing with a service drone. He had arrived at the palace that morning to repair a faulty human-built cooling unit in the diplomatic quarter. Somehow, after following the drone through 6 elevators and a corridor that changed direction while he was walking, he had ended up nowhere near the cooling unit. "This is not the maintenance wing," Daniel said. The drone rotated in the air. "Route confirmed. There are armed guards at the end of the hall. Decorative security personnel." One of the guards looked directly at Daniel. Daniel lowered his voice. "They look extremely decorative." The drone moved forward again and Daniel followed because getting lost alone seemed worse than getting lost with company. He was taller than most Kaelorans, broad-shouldered and dressed in a gray work jacket stained with machine grease. A compact tool case hung from one hand. Unlike the elegant nobles who lived in the palace, Daniel looked like someone who belonged inside an engine compartment. As he approached the upper medical wing, he heard the crying. It echoed through the corridor with a raw, exhausted desperation that made him stop. The service drone continued without him. Daniel listened. "That sounds bad," he whispered. A palace attendant hurried past carrying a tray of glowing vials. Daniel stepped aside, but one vial rolled toward the edge. He caught it before it fell. The attendant stared at him. "Thank you," she said breathlessly. "What happened?" "The princess has been crying for 2 hours." Daniel looked toward the sealed doors ahead. "And nobody can calm her?" The attendant gave him a tired, offended look. "The greatest doctors in the empire are inside. So that is a no." Before she could answer, the medical doors opened, releasing a wave of light, voices, and the sound of the child's crying. Daniel saw the queen beside the cradle. He saw the doctors surrounding machines that had clearly lost an argument with reality. And then, through the crowd, the little princess turned her tear-filled eyes toward him. For the first time in 2 hours, she stopped crying, only for one breath. Then she reached toward the stranger in the doorway. The change lasted barely a second, but everyone in the medical chamber noticed it. Princess Leora's crying stopped the instant her eyes found Daniel in the doorway. Her small chest still trembled, tears still shone on her cheeks, yet the sound vanished as if someone had cut a transmission line. Then the moment broke. She reached toward him with both hands and began crying again, louder than before. Every face in the room turned toward Daniel. He looked over his shoulder, hoping there might be someone important standing behind him. There was only the service drone, which had finally realized it had lost its passenger. "Destination error," the drone announced. "That makes 2 of us," Daniel muttered. Captain Saren moved first. His hand dropped to the weapon at his side, and 2 royal guards stepped between Daniel and the cradle. "Identify yourself." "Daniel Mercer, cooling systems technician." Saren's expression did not change. "Why are you in the Royal Medical Wing?" "I followed a drone." The drone rotated innocently. "Route confirmed," it said. Saren stared at it. Daniel pointed. "You see what I am dealing with." Queen Elira did not look at the drone. She was watching her daughter. Leora twisted beneath the blankets, still reaching past the guards toward the unfamiliar human. Dr. Valor lifted a scanner. A thin beam passed over Daniel's face and chest, projecting biological data into the air. "Human male," the doctor said. "No visible weapons. Elevated heart rate." "I am surrounded by armed strangers," Daniel replied. "I would be worried if it were relaxed." The queen raised one hand, and the guards moved aside. "Come closer." Daniel glanced at the polished floor, the floating instruments, and the dozen officials studying him like a newly discovered organism. "I should mention that I am not a doctor." "At present," Elira said. "That may be an advantage." He stepped into the chamber. Leora's cries weakened again. The medical sensors immediately responded. Curved holographic displays unfolded above the cradle, showing the chaotic activity in her nervous system. Red patterns pulsed across a map of her brain, then softened slightly as Daniel approached. Dr. Valor leaned toward the display. "That is impossible." One of the nurses sighed. "It has been a very popular word today." Daniel stopped a few steps from the child. Up close, the little princess looked even smaller. Her silver blonde hair was tangled from hours of restless movement, and the tips of her long ears were red from exhaustion. She stared at him through wet lashes, breathing in short, uneven gasps. "Hello," Daniel said gently. Leora hiccuped. The palace AI interpreted the sound as speech. "Unrecognized royal command," it announced. "Stand down," Elira said. "Standing down." The lights dimmed. "Not you." The lights brightened again. For the first time, a faint ripple of tired laughter passed through the staff. Daniel set his tool case on the floor and crouched beside the cradle. He did not touch the child. Instead, he rested his arms on his knees and allowed her to study him. "My name is Daniel," he said. "I fix machines that are usually less angry than you." Leora's lower lip trembled. "Usually," he added. She reached toward him again. Dr. Valor stepped forward. "Your Majesty, physical contact may introduce unknown pathogens." Daniel looked at the sealed medical chamber. "I passed through 3 sterilization fields to reach this floor. I am probably cleaner than the palace." The doctor ignored him. "We do not understand why she is reacting to his presence." Queen Elira's gaze remained fixed on her daughter. "We do not understand why any of your treatments failed either." Valor fell silent. The queen moved to the other side of the cradle. Her hand hovered above Leora's head, but the child kept reaching toward Daniel. "Can you hold her?" Elira asked. The question startled him more than the guards had. "I can try." Captain Saren frowned. "Your Majesty, she has been crying for 2 hours." Saren looked at the exhausted child and stepped back. Daniel removed his grease-stained jacket and rolled up the sleeves of his shirt. A nurse approached with a sterilizing mist and sprayed him from shoulders to hands. He coughed. "That smells like burned lemons." "It kills 99.9% of known organisms," the nurse said. "What happens to the remaining 0.1? They become administrators." Even the queen smiled at that. Daniel slid one arm beneath Leora's shoulders and the other beneath her knees. She was warm, almost feverish, and far lighter than he expected. The instant he lifted her, she clutched the front of his shirt. Her crying did not stop immediately. It changed. The sharp, panicked sobs became quieter, broken by long breaths. Daniel held her carefully against his chest and began walking in a slow circle, the way he remembered carrying his younger sister years ago on Earth. "No holograms," he said softly. "No machines. Just breathing." Leora pressed one ear against him. The medical displays flickered. Dr. Valor stepped closer. The red neural patterns began aligning into smooth waves. A low tone sounded from the scanner. "Her cortical stress is decreasing," Valor whispered. Daniel continued walking. Leora's hands loosened. Her breathing matched the rise and fall of his chest. Around them, the great medical chamber became silent except for the steady mechanical hum of the palace and the faint rhythm recorded by the scanners. Then the princess gave one final exhausted hiccup. Her eyes closed. Within minutes, she was asleep in Daniel's arms. No one moved. The caretaker robot projected a message above the cradle. "Recommended treatment. Continue human." Daniel looked up at it. At least one machine here knows what it is doing. For several long seconds, no one in the royal medical chamber seemed willing to breathe. Daniel stood in the center of the room with Princess Leora asleep against his chest, her small fingers still curled into his shirt. The child who had overwhelmed the finest medical systems in 9 star systems now rested as peacefully as if the past 2 hours had never happened. Above them, the holographic monitors shifted from warning red to calm silver. Dr. Valor stared at the readings. Then he stared at Daniel. Then he stared at the readings again, perhaps hoping they would apologize and correct themselves. "Her neural activity is stabilizing," he said at last. Captain Saren folded his arms. "You sound disappointed." "I am confused." "You also sound disappointed when you are confused." "I have spent 30 years studying the royal nervous system." Daniel looked down at Leora. "I have spent about 6 minutes holding her." Valor's long ears lowered. "Thank you for clarifying the humiliating part." Queen Elira approached slowly. The hard authority in her expression had softened, though exhaustion still shadowed her eyes. She touched 2 fingers to her daughter's cheek. Leora did not wake. "She has not slept without medication in 3 nights, the queen whispered. Daniel's humor faded. 3 nights? The episodes began as brief moments of distress, Valor explained. They grew longer each day. We believed they were caused by sensory overload, but every treatment made the condition worse. A scanner floated closer to Daniel's shoulder. He leaned away from it. Does that thing need to be so near my face? It is analyzing your biological field. It looks like it is choosing where to bite. The machine emitted a polite chime. It has no teeth, Valor said. That is exactly what a machine with hidden teeth would want me to believe. The Queen almost laughed, but her attention remained on the child. Can she be moved? Valor studied the data. Not yet. Whatever is calming her may weaken if contact is broken. Daniel glanced toward the nearest chair. The chair was narrow, metallic, and designed with the rigid elegance of furniture created by people who considered comfort a moral failure. Do royal palaces have anything humans can sit on? Captain Saren pointed to a reclining diagnostic platform. Daniel lowered himself onto it carefully. The platform adjusted around his body, raising one side and lowering the other until he nearly slid backward. Patient posture optimized, the platform announced. I am not a patient. Denial recorded. Saren looked away, but Daniel saw his shoulders move with silent laughter. Dr. Valor activated a deeper scan. Rings of light rotated around Daniel and Leora, mapping their heartbeats, nerve impulses, body temperatures, and bioelectric fields. Two streams of data appeared above them. Leora's brain waves flowed in pale, uneven lines. Daniel's heartbeat appeared beneath them as a steady golden pulse. At first, the two patterns seemed unrelated. Then the system magnified the final minutes. Every time Daniel's heart contracted, a subtle wave passed through Leora's neural activity. Her chaotic signals weakened, reorganized, and began repeating at the same interval. Valor stepped closer. That cannot be natural. Daniel sighed. We have already established that today is full of things that cannot happen. The doctor expanded the projection. Her nervous system is not merely responding to your warmth or voice. It is synchronizing with your cardiovascular rhythm. Queen Elira looked at the golden pulse. Why? I do not know. The answer silenced the room more effectively than any alarm. Valor sent the data to the palace's central intelligence. The AI processed it through millions of medical records, evolutionary models, and historical genomes. Symbols flashed rapidly across the air. No known Kailoran heartbeat produces this frequency, the AI announced. Match probability within royal lineage, 0.003%. Captain Saren frowned. That sounds low. It is lower than your chance of becoming a professional dancer, the AI replied. Saren's hand moved toward his weapon. The Queen raised an eyebrow. Do not arrest the palace intelligence. It started it. Daniel felt Leora shift. Her long ear rested directly above his heart, and her breathing changed whenever his rhythm changed. When he took a slow breath, she followed. When he held it, her fingers tightened. He immediately breathed again. Valor noticed. Remain calm. I was calm until everyone began studying my heartbeat like it contained military secrets. The golden pulse accelerated slightly. Leora stirred. Every person in the room froze. Daniel placed one hand gently against her back. He began humming an old earth tune, one he barely remembered from childhood. It had no words now, only a soft, uneven melody. His heartbeat slowed. Leora settled again. The medical displays aligned. Dr. Valor's face changed. Not relief, not wonder, fear. He enlarged an ancient neurological diagram beside Daniel's scan. The image was incomplete and marked with symbols from a language no longer spoken. Elira recognized the royal seal at its center. Where did you find that? In a restricted archive beneath the palace, Valor said. The record is more than 40,000 years old. The Queen's gaze sharpened. What does it describe? Valor compared the ancient pattern to Daniel's heartbeat. They matched almost perfectly. It describes a lost resonance condition in the first royal bloodline, he said quietly. A condition that could be stabilized by a biological rhythm believed to have vanished from the galaxy. Daniel looked down at the sleeping child. And apparently it did not vanish. No, Valor said. It survived inside humanity. The restricted archive beneath the palace had not been opened in 4 centuries, largely because every scholar who requested access was told the same thing. The records were too dangerous, too fragile, or too boring to justify the paperwork. Dr. Valor claimed the first reason was correct. Captain Saren suspected the third. Daniel, still carrying the sleeping princess, was mostly concerned that the underground elevator had no chairs. Queen Elira stood beside him as the platform descended through layers of white metal, ancient stone, and finally a region where the palace walls no longer appeared to have been built by modern Kaloran hands. The surfaces were dark, seamless, and faintly warm, threaded with lines that glowed whenever Leora breathed. That seems normal, Daniel said. Saren glanced at the awakening lights. It has never done that before. Excellent, I always enjoy being present when ancient structures begin noticing me. The elevator stopped before a circular door covered in symbols older than the Empire. Valor placed his hand against a scanner, but the door remained closed. The palace intelligence announced that his authorization was valid, and his genetic importance was not. Saren covered a cough that sounded suspiciously like laughter. Queen Elira pressed her palm to the center seal. The symbols lit in response to her royal blood, yet the door opened only a few centimeters before locking again. Then Leora shifted in Daniel's arms. Her ear pressed more firmly against his chest. His heartbeat echoed through the silent chamber, amplified by hidden sensors buried inside the walls. The circular door trembled and separated into 6 rotating sections. Valor stared. It recognized him. Daniel looked at the ancient machinery. Can we agree not to tell the door I repair cooling units? I do not want it asking for maintenance. Beyond the entrance lay a vast archive chamber filled with suspended crystal columns. Each contained streams of preserved memory rather than written data. Genetic maps, neural recordings, and fragments of lives stored as light. The air smelled faintly of rain, though no water had touched the room in tens of thousands of years. At the center stood a black platform beneath a holographic image of 2 figures. One was unmistakably Kyloran, with long ears and the narrow face common among the earliest royal line. The other was shorter-eared, broader in the shoulders, and disturbingly human. Elira moved closer. Our official histories say my ancestors developed alone on Kalora. Official histories also say the palace foundations are naturally occurring, Saren said. Daniel looked at the perfectly carved walls. Your planet grows very organized rocks. Valor activated the platform. The preserved recording flickered, producing a broken message in an ancient language. The palace intelligence translated what it could. Thousands of years before Kalora's first empire, a human expedition had reached the system through an unstable fold in space. The travelers had found the early Kalorans suffering from a neurological instability caused by rapid genetic adaptation to the planet's magnetic field. Human cardiovascular rhythms, especially the low-frequency electrical pulse surrounding the heart, had calmed the affected children. For generations, the 2 species had lived together. The royal bloodline had even been deliberately altered to preserve sensitivity to that rhythm. Then the records fractured. Images flashed of laboratories, frightened families, and ships vanishing into a collapsing spatial corridor. They erased the connection, Elira whispered. Valor studied the damaged sequence. Not entirely. Someone sealed it beneath the palace. Another file opened without being requested. It displayed the structure of Leora's brain beside Daniel's cardiac field. The resemblance to the ancient data was exact. The child's condition was not a disease in the usual sense. A dormant receptor in her nervous system had activated during development, searching for a biological signal absent from Kaloran society for millennia. Without it, her brain had entered a cycle of escalating distress. Can it be treated? Elira asked. Valor hesitated. Possibly, We can reproduce sound, vibration, and electrical activity, but this resonance includes microscopic variations created by living tissue. A machine may imitate the pattern without producing the same effect. Daniel looked down at Leora. So she needs a human heartbeat. For now, Valor said. Until we understand how to stabilize the receptor permanently. The Queen's expression became unreadable. Daniel recognized it as the face of someone calculating consequences larger than the room. One human had calmed her daughter. Billions of Calorans would soon learn that a forgotten bond existed between their species. Politicians would call it opportunity. Nobles would call it contamination. Scientists would call it the discovery of the age and immediately begin requesting samples of Daniel's blood, skin, hair, and probably his lunch. Leora stirred before anyone could speak. Her eyes opened slowly, unfocused at first, then settled on Daniel's face. "Still here?" she whispered. "Unfortunately," he said softly. "The palace keeps moving the exits." Her mouth curved into the smallest smile. Then she placed her hand over his heart and looked toward the holographic human figure. "That sound," she murmured. "I heard it in my dreams before you came." Every crystal column in the chamber illuminated at once. Deep below them, something ancient answered with a single mechanical heartbeat. The mechanical heartbeat beneath the archive sounded only once, yet its vibration traveled through the floor, up the crystal columns, and into Daniel's bones. Princess Leora lifted her head from his chest. Her long ears angled toward the darkness beyond the holographic platform, and the ancient lights around them began pulsing in time with Daniel's living rhythm. Dr. Valor immediately raised his scanner. "There is an active system below us." "You said this was the lowest level," Daniel replied. "It was. Your palace has a disturbing habit of discovering additional basement." Queen Elira moved to the edge of the platform, where a circular pattern had appeared in the floor. Symbols rotated around it like the hands of a clock measuring a forgotten age. The palace intelligence attempted to access the mechanism, but its voice broke into static. "Unknown architecture, unknown power source, unknown." The system paused. "I dislike this." Captain Saren looked upward. "That makes two intelligent beings in the palace." The floor opened before the AI could answer. A narrow stairway descended into darkness lit by thin silver veins. Elira ordered Saren to remain with Leora, but the princess tightened her arms around Daniel's neck. "No." Her voice was weak but certain. "It called me." Daniel looked at the queen. "I have learned that arguing with small royalty is rarely successful." Elira sighed. "It is rarely successful with adult royalty either." They descended together, with Valor carrying 3 scanners and complaining that none of them agreed about the temperature. The air grew warmer with every step. Far below, a vast chamber emerged, built around a machine shaped like an enormous heart. Its curved metallic chambers contracted slowly, pumping streams of luminous particles through transparent conduits buried in the walls. At the center stood a ring large enough to surround a shuttle, filled with distorted images of stars. Valor's scanner emitted a warning tone. "This is fold space technology." Daniel stared at the shifting darkness inside the ring. A gateway? An incomplete one, or a damaged one. The ancient machine pulsed again, and Leora gasped. Her neural monitor flashed red. Daniel held her closer, but this time his heartbeat did not calm her completely. The artificial pulse below was interfering, creating 2 competing rhythms inside her nervous system. Valor understood at once. This machine activated the receptor. Queen Elira turned sharply. Her condition began because of this chamber? Perhaps not intentionally. Its power cycles may have produced a resonance strong enough to awaken the dormant trait. Another pulse passed through the room. Leora whimpered and buried her face against Daniel. He began walking slowly, matching his steps to his breathing, but the machine copied him. Its contractions accelerated until every conduit glowed gold. A holographic figure appeared before the ring. the ancient human from the archive recording. His image was incomplete, his face broken by static. Biological key recognized, the recording said. Guardian lineage detected. Daniel frowned. I am a cooling technician. Guardian lineage detected, it repeated. It has clearly never seen your employment record, Saren said. Valor examined the hologram and discovered that the machine had not been built only as a gateway. It was a medical network designed to broadcast human cardiac resonance across entire cities, protecting Kaloran children after the human settlers disappeared. But someone had altered its final commands. The network had been shut down, its history erased, and its power core left to awaken only when royal genetics and a compatible human heartbeat appeared together. It has been waiting for both of you, Elira said. Daniel looked at Leora. Her tiny hand rested over his heart, counting each beat as if she feared losing it. Before he could answer, alarms appeared across Valor's scanner. The machine was transmitting beyond the palace. Data signals were spreading through the capital's communication grid, and already reporters, scientists, and military stations were detecting the unknown broadcast. We have minutes before the entire planet knows something is happening beneath the throne, Valor warned. Daniel gave him a tired look. Do you have any good news? Your heartbeat remains strong. That is not news. That is a threat from the universe. Queen Elira ordered the chamber sealed, but the ancient system ignored her. It projected a genetic map of the royal family, then highlighted Leora's neural instability. Beside it appeared a treatment sequence requiring prolonged exposure to a living human rhythm. Estimated stabilization time, 12 days. The room fell silent. Daniel understood before anyone spoke. He had entered the palace to repair a cooling unit and was now apparently a medical device with legs. Leora looked up at him, her eyes heavy with fear. Will you leave? He glanced at the queen, the hidden gateway, and the ancient machine pulsing around them. Then he smiled gently. I still have not found the exit. Leora gave a small laugh and relaxed against him. Above the chamber, the first unauthorized news signal reached the public networks. Within an hour, the entire empire would know that the princess had been saved by a human. Within 2, someone would decide that Daniel was either a miracle, a danger, or both. By sunset, Daniel had acquired 3 new titles without applying for any of them. The public networks called him the Heartkeeper, the Lost Guardian, and in one particularly enthusiastic broadcast, the human who silenced a princess. Daniel preferred cooling technician, but no one seemed interested in accuracy anymore. The palace had sealed its lower levels, restricted all outgoing transmissions, and failed completely to prevent half the capital from gathering outside the gates. Holographic news drones hovered above the towers like metallic insects, projecting Daniel's face beside dramatic animations of beating hearts and collapsing stars. One broadcaster claimed he had been discovered inside an ancient tomb. Another insisted he was secretly descended from the founders of the royal line. A third displayed an image of Daniel, with glowing eyes and 4 arms. I look taller, Daniel said. Queen Elira stood beside the medical chamber window, watching the crowd beyond the shielded glass. You are taking this remarkably well. I once repaired a reactor while the owner explained how reactors worked. After that, very little frightens you. Leora slept against him in a reclining chair that the palace engineers had finally modified for human comfort. Her breathing remained steady, though thin sensor threads traced silver patterns across her temples. Every few seconds, the monitors compared her neural activity with Daniel's heartbeat. The 12-day treatment had begun. Dr. Valor had constructed a resonance field around the room, amplifying Daniel's natural cardiac rhythm without altering it. The machine worked only when he remained within a few meters of Leora. Whenever he stepped too far away, her brainwaves began to fragment. This discovery created several practical problems. The first involved sleep. The second involved privacy. The third involved 12 royal officials attempting to schedule Daniel's bathroom visits. I refused to submit a written request, he told Valor. It is not a request. It is a medical timetable. It has 3 signatures. Royal bladders require fewer regulations. I am beginning to understand why your empire needed a revolution every few centuries. Despite the humor, tension spread through the palace. Nobles arrived, demanding access to Daniel. Military commanders wanted the ancient chamber placed under armed control. Scientists submitted requests for tissue samples with such enthusiasm that Captain Saren threatened to remove their fingers and label them research donations. The most dangerous opposition came from Lord Mailer, head of the Royal Purity Council. He entered the medical wing surrounded by guards in ceremonial black armor and regarded Daniel as if humanity were a stain on an otherwise polished floor. "This arrangement cannot continue," Mailer said. "The heir to the throne has become dependent on an alien." Daniel looked around. "I believe I am the alien here. No one asked you to speak. No one asked me to become palace equipment either, yet the day has been full of surprises." Mailer's long ears drew back. "Your Majesty, this human's presence creates a political vulnerability. If he leaves, the princess suffers. If he is harmed, the princess suffers. If Earth learns of this—" "They will learn," Elira interrupted. "Truth does not become safer because frightened men bury it." Mailer's gaze hardened. Some truths were buried for a reason. The room went still. Valor turned from the monitors. "What do you know?" For the first time, Mailer appeared to regret speaking. He denied everything, but the ancient archive had already identified encrypted genetic signatures linked to families that had served the palace for thousands of years. Valor quietly compared Mailer's bloodline to the damaged records. A match appeared. His ancestors had authorized the shutdown of the cardiac network. Captain Saren sealed the doors. Mailer moved toward his guards, but their weapons deactivated before they could draw them. The palace intelligence announced with unusual satisfaction, "Decorative security personnel neutralized." Daniel nodded toward the ceiling. "It has been waiting all day to say that." Under questioning, Mailer finally revealed what his family had protected for generations. The ancient resonance system had not merely soothed children. At full strength, it could influence fear, aggression, trust, and obedience across an entire population. The first rulers had used it to prevent wars, then to suppress dissent. When the human founders discovered the abuse, they attempted to destroy the network. The conflict shattered the fold space gateway and stranded the remaining humans far from Kalora. The records were erased afterward. Leora's condition had awakened because the damaged network had begun restarting beneath the palace. Someone had recently supplied it with power. "Who?" Elira demanded. Mailer said nothing. Then every light in the chamber dimmed. A pulse rolled through the floor. Leora woke with a cry. Daniel pulled her close, but the monitors surged into red. The ancient machine was broadcasting again, stronger than before, forcing its artificial rhythm into the capital. Outside, the crowd fell silent at the same instant. Thousands of people turned toward the palace with identical expressions. Valor stared at the citywide neural readings. "The network is active." Daniel felt Leora trembling against him. Beneath her fear, his heartbeat struggled to remain steady. "Can we shut it down?" Valor looked toward the sealed lower levels. "Not from here." Queen Elira drew the weapon at her side. Daniel rose with Leora in his arms. Mailer smiled faintly. Then the palace intelligence spoke through every wall. "Unauthorized user identified beneath the throne." A holographic image appeared above the floor. The face belonged to Dr. Valor's missing predecessor, a scientist officially dead for 11 years. Dr. Thalen Reese had been declared dead after an experimental shuttle vanished beyond Kylora's outer moon. In reality, he had spent 11 years beneath the palace, hidden inside the ancient network, teaching it to obey him. His holographic face hovered above the medical chamber, pale and distorted by interference. "The Empire has confused freedom with disorder," he said. "The old system created peace. I intend to restore it." Outside, Thousands of citizens stood motionless beneath the palace towers, their emotions flattened by the broadcast. Across the capital, transport lanes slowed, arguments ceased, and even frightened children stared silently toward the royal district. Daniel looked through the window. That is his idea of peace? Lord Mailer lowered his eyes. His family helped mine preserve the network. I believed he wanted only to study it. Captain Saren seized him by the shoulder. You might have mentioned the undead scientist beneath the throne. I was not certain. He is broadcasting his face across the palace. I am more certain now. Leora trembled in Daniel's arms as the artificial rhythm hammered through the floor. Each pulse disrupted her breathing and dragged her nervous system toward the machine's command. Daniel pressed her ear against his chest, but his heartbeat alone could no longer overcome the citywide signal. Dr. Valor studied the cascading data. The network is using her royal genetics as an amplifier. If Riss completes the link, every Kaloran connected to the planetary grid will become permanently receptive. Queen Elira drew herself upright. Fear remained in her eyes, but it no longer ruled them. Then we go below. They descended through the archive in a shielded elevator, while the palace intelligence fought to delay the network. The AI sealed doors, rerouted power, and insulted Riss's technical competence whenever possible. Your encryption is outdated, it announced. Riss's voice answered through the walls. You are a servant intelligence. I am also winning. The elevator doors opened into the ancient chamber. The enormous metallic heart was beating rapidly now, filling the transparent conduits with violent golden light. Riss stood on the central platform, older than his hologram, his body wrapped in neural cables that entered his spine and skull. You brought the child, he said. Daniel held Leora tighter. You say that as though we brought dessert. Riss activated the gateway ring. A storm of distorted stars appeared behind him. Humanity once gave this world stability, then destroyed its own gift out of weakness. You will complete what your ancestors abandoned. I repair cooling systems. You carry the biological key. That has been an inconvenient promotion. Riss sent a command through the network. The metallic heart contracted, and Daniel's knees nearly buckled. Leora cried out. Across the holographic map of the city, millions of neural signals began aligning with the artificial pulse. Valor pointed toward 3 control spires around the chamber. The network can be shut down only if the royal authorization, the human rhythm, and the central core are disconnected simultaneously. Saren ran toward the first spire as security drones emerged from the walls. Elira moved to the royal console, pressing her palm against its burning surface. Valor hurried to the core controls while Daniel carried Leora toward the resonance platform. Riss laughed. You cannot overpower a planetary system with one heartbeat. Daniel looked at the frightened child in his arms. At the beginning of the day, he had wanted only to finish a repair and leave the palace unnoticed. Now an empire depended on him remaining exactly where every instinct told him to run. He set Leora against his chest and whispered, Listen only to me. Then he began the old Earth melody. The first notes were unsteady. The machine struck back with a deafening pulse. Daniel continued, slowing his breathing, remembering the quiet patience with which he had once carried his little sister through thunderstorms. Leora's sobs softened. Her fingers closed around his shirt. Her heartbeat matched his. The platform recognized the combined rhythm and flooded the chamber with warm white light. The signal spread into the network, not as a command but as a living pattern filled with endless natural variation. The ancient machine could imitate obedience. It could not imitate trust. Across the capital, people began waking from the trance. Riss screamed and forced more power into the core. Now! Valor shouted. Elira revoked the royal authorization. Saren destroyed the security relay with a pulse shot. Valor released the overloaded energy into the unstable gateway. Daniel's heartbeat became the final key. The metallic heart stopped. For one terrible second, the chamber was silent. Then the gateway collapsed inward, pulling the artificial resonance, the corrupted code, and Reese's control interface into a shrinking point of light. Saren dragged Mailer away from the platform while Elira shielded Valor. Daniel turned his body around Leora as the last shockwave passed over them. When he looked up, the ancient machine was dark. Leora was still listening to his heart. "Did we win?" she whispered. Daniel glanced at the smoking consoles. "The palace will probably send me the repair bill, so I am not celebrating yet." Her tired laugh echoed through the ruined chamber. In the weeks that followed, Mailer surrendered the names of every official involved in hiding the network. He was imprisoned, though his testimony helped dismantle the Purity Council. Valor and scientists from Earth developed a safe treatment using adaptive biofields modeled on living human heart rhythms. It did not control the mind. It taught Leora's nervous system to regulate itself. The hidden archives were open to both civilizations. Kailora learned that humanity had once stood beside its ancestors, not above or beneath them. Earth learned that an old branch of its history had survived among distant stars. Daniel was offered medals, estates, and a ceremonial title he could not pronounce. He accepted only a permanent engineering position at the palace and one comfortable chair in the medical wing. Months later, he sat beside an open balcony while Leora slept nearby without sensors, medicines, or fear. Queen Elira watched her daughter breathe peacefully. "You could return to Earth," she said. "I could. But you will not." Daniel smiled at the cooling unit humming quietly in the corner. Someone installed that incorrectly. Elira followed his gaze. "It was installed by our finest engineers." "That explains it." Leora stirred, crossed the room half asleep, and climbed into his arms. Her long ear settled over his chest, though she no longer needed the sound to survive. Daniel held her anyway. Far beyond the palace, human and Kailoran ships crossed the restored routes between their worlds. The galaxy had changed because an ordinary man had taken one wrong corridor, ignored several sensible reasons to leave, and discovered that sometimes the smallest act of kindness could become a bridge between entire civilizations. The palace intelligence lowered the lights. "Recommended treatment," it announced softly. "Continue human." Daniel closed his eyes. "For once," he murmured, "we agree."